You all are familiar by now, I think, with the fact that Louisiana passed a law a couple months ago to require every public school in the state, every classroom, to put a copy of the Ten Commandments up. Like every classroom needs a copy of the King James Version Ten Commandments. And they modified it trying to escape any unconstitutionality. Like there has to be a disclaimer nearby. You have the option of putting other things around it, but it's illegal. It's absolutely illegal. Just to give you some specifics here, when the governor of Louisiana, Republican Jeff Landry, when he signed that law, he actually said in a speech he can't wait to be sued. He knew it was going to lead to a lawsuit. And guess what? They were sued. A whole coalition of religious and non-religious plaintiffs, backed by several church-state separation groups, have already filed a lawsuit saying this law is unconstitutional. And we've talked about that on this live stream before. They said the law substantially interferes with and burdens their clients' First Amendment freedoms. Basically, by mandating the KJV 10 Commandments in every classroom, the state is effectively telling kids which religion counts and which ones don't. And the practical consequence of that is telling kids from non-KJV families, and that includes some Christians, that they are second-class citizens. So that's why they filed this lawsuit. Now, in terms of the logistics here, what Landry has said is the law doesn't have to go into effect until January 1st. So no one has to put up the 10 Commandments on the walls until January 1st. The judge has chimed in and said, guess what? Even though school is starting soon, no school can even think about putting up a 10 Commandments sign until like November, which gives him time to issue a ruling one way or the other. Like January 1st is theoretically when penalties would apply, but no school can do it until November. That's where we are right now. This is in the courts. We have to wait for a decision. Okay. This week, however, the governor of Louisiana and the state's attorney general, Liz Murrill, they held a press conference. Basically, they said, we are filing a motion with the judge telling him to throw out those other people's lawsuit. Just toss it. You don't need to do anything with it. They're saying our law is totally legal, and they wanted to make a case for why their law is legal and why the judge shouldn't waste his time with it. Okay? And I'm going to play you one first clip from the press conference, because this is what the attorney general is saying for why the case should be tossed out.
So as we explain in the brief, the lawsuit is premature. And the plaintiffs cannot prove that they have any actual injury. That's because they don't allege to have seen any displays yet, and they certainly can't allege that they have seen any display of the 10 Commandments that violates their constitutional rights. No defendant has actually posted the 10 Commandments on a classroom wall. Because this lawsuit is all based on hypothetical facts, the court can't decide the case yet. So we've asked the court to dismiss the case on that basis in our brief.
Her argument, by the way, in case you are listening to this, the audio is weird in the press conference and you can only hear it out of one side. So sorry about that. But the argument she's making is that, hey, look, there are no 10 Commandments posters in any classroom. So why are you suing us right now? You got to wait until January or at least November. You got to wait till these posters go up. Then maybe you could file a lawsuit. But right now, there's nothing up on the walls. So you have no standing. You're not injured, legally speaking, in any way. It hasn't violated your rights because the posters aren't even up yet. That is her argument for why they should be dismissed. Except that's not really how it works. The law has already been passed. So you don't have to wait for the commandments posters to go up before you could say, this bothers me. Legally speaking, it's unconstitutional because the law has already passed. So legally speaking, I don't think she has any case here. One other thing I want to play for you before I get to the other bit is that Jeff Landry, the governor, then spoke up and said, why is everyone making a big deal of this? The 10 Commandments are wonderful. Here's his clip. Again, one side of your earpiece here.
I did not know that the Ten Commandments was such a bad way for someone to live their life. And I believe that the legislature was only following the will of the people of the state. Because when you look at the sheer votes that were cast in the support of this bill, it was done in a bipartisan support.
That little bit of word salad there makes no sense at all, because the First Amendment is not subject to popular vote. First of all, he said, we're just following the will of the people. It was bipartisan. It doesn't matter if it was 100% bipartisan and every lawmaker voted for it. You can't, it would still be illegal. You can't pass a law to override a right. That's why they are rights. It doesn't matter if it's popular vote. And you would think that the leader of a southern state would understand why the popular vote shouldn't always matter. Sometimes rights matter more than what everyone wants, because guess what? Sometimes the majority of people want some really horrible things. The law is illegal because posting a Christian display in a public school classroom, no matter what it looks like, no matter how many votes you got in favor of it, no matter how many excuses you offer to say this is just American history, it all violates the First Amendment. It violates the idea that the government cannot promote a religion or even religion over no religion, right? No amount of window dressing is going to change that. There's one more clip I want to play for you, which is a reporter actually asked that guy, Jeff Landry, the governor, hey, what would you say, hypothetically, to the parent, to a parent who's an atheist? Or maybe if they have a son or daughter who's an atheist, what do you say to them? And his answer was predictably horrible.
And may I ask either of you, for the children who may not believe in God and see this in their classroom, or parents who are upset that they may be in their child's classroom, what should they do?
Well, here's what I would say. I think we've forgotten in this country that democracy actually means majority rules. For some kind of way over the last 2 decades or so, for whatever reason, our government has flipped the script, or the people believe that we flipped the script. When you elect people, you elect them by a majority. That majority gets to rule. That does not mean that if you don't like something, you have a right to impose that which the majority likes. And so what I would say to those parents is that if those posters are in school and they find them so vulgar, just tell the child not to look at it.
Tell the child not to look at it. That's your answer for the atheist. And by the way, not just atheist. That applies to every non-Christian and every non-KJV Christian. Just don't look at it. What's the big deal? Like, you would never see a governor say that to Christians. Like, oh, if you don't like this satanic prayer, just, cover your ears. It's not a big deal. You'll never hear them say that, because what he said was the sort of thing you only ever hear from Christians who expect their religion to be treated like the default option. It's apparently everyone else's job to ignore the Christian propaganda, not the government's responsibility to not promote a preferred religion. It's just ridiculous. And again, he said democracy actually means majority rules. No, not when it comes to laws, not when it comes to overriding civil rights or anything like that. How does a governor not get that? I mean, I know he's Republican, but come on. But the star of the press conference was not that guy. It was the attorney general, the state's attorney general next to him, who I did not know before this week because I had no reason to know her. But it was appalling just how bad she is at her job. And I know that because I watched the rest of the press conference, because here's what she actually did during the press conference. Instead of just saying a bunch of stupid things, what she's argued, like I said, she says the case should be tossed out because these 10 Commandments posters aren't up, so there's nothing for anybody to be offended by. And then she offered lots of examples of possible 10 Commandments posters that could go up in classrooms that, you guys, they are so inoffensive that no one could ever be offended by them. And she wanted to show, like, come on, if you showed this poster in the classroom, do you really think anyone would say what we're doing is indoctrination? So she had examples. Her staff, her office made a whole bunch of posters to show people, to as if to prove there's nothing offensive about the Ten Commandments. And because I'm pretty sure she did not expect anyone to take a close look at those posters, I looked at them and they're insane. I'm going to show you some of them. Interestingly enough, I'll show you this. There is a 60-page motion that her office filed with the judge in Louisiana saying, just get rid of this case. In this lawsuit, after, laying out their argument, she actually includes a bunch of pictures of posters that she says are totally inoffensive. Where did they go? They're down here somewhere. You could see some of these posters they designed. And I'm going to show you some of them up close, okay? But you could see she has these images that her office made throughout this lawsuit. Let me show you one of them, for example, because she had a handful of these available for like high-res images of some of the posters that she showed at the press conference. Here is one example of them. Here, check this out. How does the Supreme Court view the Ten Commandments? This is educational, everybody. We're just saying, what does the Supreme Court say about the commandments? Now, behind my head here, that is an image of the type of monument that has been placed outside of some courthouses, state legislatures. So there is your KJV 10 Commandments. That's what Louisiana law says you have to put up in the classroom. But then if you zoom in here, you see a few interesting things. I know it's hard for me to zoom in and get you everything here, but they cite American Legion versus American Humanist Association, which is about I think that one was about a Christian cross, but they cite the Ten Commandments and they say for believing Jews and Christians, the Ten Commandments are the word of God. Yeah. The Supreme Court has mentioned the Ten Commandments, but I was interested in these two right here. They're both from Van Orden v. Perry, which is a Supreme Court case from a while back, like 2 decades ago, about 10 Commandments monuments outside a courthouse and a state legislature. There were like 2 Supreme Court cases about 10 Commandments monuments at the same time. They basically said one of them is illegal because it's by itself outside a courthouse, and clearly that privileges Christianity. That's illegal. The other one was outside the Texas state capitol, and they said that one can stay because it's part of a larger display about like the history of law. So it's not privileging Christianity. It's just one of many things. So that was the weird argument offered by the Supreme Court. But interestingly enough, look at what they quote here in the upper left. They quote a dissent from Van Orden v. Perry, where they say the court has subscribed to the view that the Ten Commandments influence the development of Western legal thought, period. And that's interesting because, like, why would a dissent in a case that says the Ten Commandments are fine, why would the dissent say, yeah, I mean, the Ten Commandments did influence Western legal thought? And that's strange. So I went to the dissent to look it up. And on page 37 of Van Orden v. Perry, in the dissent, by the way, you could see this is Justice John Paul Stevens dissenting. This is in a footnote, and I want you to look at this with me. Though this court has subscribed to the view that the Ten Commandments influence the development of Western legal thought, it has not officially endorsed the far more specific claim that the Ten Commandments played a significant role in the development of our nation's foundational documents. Basically saying, I know what the majority said, but they're full of shit. And interestingly enough, the part that says they are full of shit was left off of this quotation right here on the upper left. What about the one right behind my head here? A display of the Ten Commandments accompanied by an exposition of how they have influenced modern law would most likely be constitutionally unobjectionable. I'm going to pause there for a second because no one was arguing against that. Everyone, including church-state separation people, say, yeah, it's fine to teach kids about the Ten Commandments in an objective way. And if you look at the rest of this content, And the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments, could be integrated constitutionally into a course of study in public schools. Yeah, no one was arguing otherwise. We know you can talk about it. If you're reading a book in English class, maybe it's worth bringing up the Ten Commandments because there's a reference to it. No one was saying you can't do that. The difference is just posting the Ten Commandments by itself is clearly an endorsement of Christianity. That's why it's illegal. So why are they quoting these things? This one right above my head that nobody's talking about. This one to your left that totally takes that out of context. Why are they including that in the poster? That is messed up. And that suggests the Attorney General didn't think anyone would look at the poster, did she? Okay, then there is another poster she puts up. Oh, by the way, I should say that the second display right here, the second quotation rather, that's from David Souter's dissent. And you know what David Souter said? He said it would be okay for the Ten Commandments to be displayed in public spaces so long as there is a context, and that context is historical. Basically saying, we didn't say you can't do the Ten Commandments, but you can't treat it like it's special. So this thing goes against the Louisiana law. Poster is a giant cell phone. Then there was this poster that the Attorney General also put up. And she was very excited by this because, like, you guys, we're quoting Ruth Bader Ginsburg. That's one of your people, not one of our people. And look at this amazing quotation from Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Since the beginning of time, the world has known 4 great documents. Great, because all the benefits to humanity which came about as a result of their fine ideals and principles. And if you zoom in here, if I can zoom in here, you could see that those 4 great documents include the 1689 English Bill of Rights. We got the Ten Commandments, you got the Declaration of Independence, and you got the Magna Carta. Okay, fine. But think about this for a second, because I think this is a fair question. When did Ruth Bader Ginsburg, when did RBG call the Ten Commandments one of the world's 4 great documents? Because I feel like that's something I would have picked up on had she done it in a Supreme Court ruling at any point in her career, right? Like, that doesn't sound like RBG. And so I had to go look this up. And actually, I want to show you one other thing. In the lawsuit, if I go to the part where she mentions Ruth Bader Ginsburg, look at what she says. I want to make sure you are seeing this. For history classrooms, a school, teacher, or civic nonprofit looking to donate displays might consider looking to the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who wrote in her book, My Own Words, the following. So in the lawsuit, the Attorney General is filing, telling the judge to toss out the lawsuit against her. She's saying, if you're looking for an inoffensive way to show the Ten Commandments, here's an example for you. Look at what RBG wrote in her book, My Own Words, because this legally has the Ten Commandments there, but it's clearly inoffensive. Liberals should love it. It's Ruth Bader Ginsburg. But again, I ask you, where does that quotation come from? She didn't mention it in her lawsuit. She did not mention it in her press conference. So I looked it up in the book. You know where it is in the book? You're not going to believe this. In her book, My Own Words, Ruth Bader Ginsburg publishes an essay that she wrote in grade 8. This is from Ruth Bader, grade 8, in 1946. And the beginning of her essay says the part that's quoted, and it, gives a shout out to the Ten Commandments, which, fine, whatever, I don't care. But let's all be clear, the Attorney General of Louisiana is quoting Ruth Bader Ginsburg from when she was 12 or 13. Listen, I was 12 or 13 once. I was legally stupid. Why on earth are we citing what anybody said when they were 12 or 13 as if that justifies why the Ten Commandments should be put up on classroom walls? That's how deceptive these Louisiana legislators are. Okay? Messed up. Then it got worse. Oh, it got worse. I'm going to show you the next poster she showed the crowd in the press conference. This one will make you cringe more than anything. Are you ready for this? Look at it. Look at it. The 10 dual commandments. She's basically saying, look, Lin-Manuel Miranda cited basically the 10 commandments in the musical Hamilton. Like, he cited the 10 dual commandments, which is like the 10 commandments in the Bible. So you get the 10 commandments in the Bible. That's Charlton Heston from the movie. And she's saying, see, you can't understand the 10 commandments in Hamilton unless you understand the real 10 commandments in the Bible. Which is dumb, because if you have seen Hamilton, if you know the music in Hamilton, you know Lin-Manuel Miranda is not giving a shout out to the 10 commandments in the Bible. It's basically a list of 10 things, and it's fun to just call any 10 things the 10 commandments because it sounds official. But what's interesting is, do you know where that actually comes from? The 10 dual commandments? If you go to genius.com, where they have song lyrics, annotated song lyrics. Turns out Lin-Manuel Miranda annotated the Hamilton lyrics. And if you could see on the left side of your screen, I highlighted it's the 10 dual commandments. And then you have above my head here, Lin-Manuel Miranda's actual contributions. Like, this is a verified annotation from Lin-Manuel Miranda. And look what he says here. It was super codified. There was a ritual about it. He's talking about dueling. It was like legal arbitration with guns. So I came up with the idea of doing 10 dual commandments because 10 crack commandments, which is a rap song from the 90s, is a how-to guide for illegal activity in the 90s. And this is a how-to guide for illegal activities in the 1790s. So the 10 dual commandments is based on the song 10 crack commandments. Who is that one by? I thought he mentioned it in here. Sorry, I don't know that song personally. But the point is, it is not based on the biblical 10 commandments. And yet, Louisiana's attorney general and every single idiot who works in her office is so oblivious to this that they're like, you know what we could do? We could just say Lin-Manuel Miranda supports the Bible's 10, not an endorsement per se, but he used it, and that's a shout out to the Bible's 10 commandments. No, it's not. Here's another one from her press conference. Hey, let's just compare Martin Luther King Jr. to Moses. Because you know what MLK did? Back in the day, he required Birmingham campaign volunteers to sign a commitment card consisting of 10 commandments. And listen, that is true. He did have his volunteers fill out this commitment that they are going to be nonviolent. But you could see on the left side of your screen here, a lot of this stuff is super religious because guess what? Martin Luther King Jr. was a reverend. But like it says, meditate daily on the teachings and life of Jesus. It says later on, pray daily to be used by God in order that all men might be free. Martin Luther King did have a 10 commandments for nonviolence. I would argue it's also super religious. So unless you're studying that objectively, that shouldn't be on a classroom wall either. Two wrongs don't make a right here. But also, you don't need to know the actual 10 commandments to understand what MLK was trying to do. He's not trying to get you to convert or anything like that. Here's one more poster that they showed in Louisiana too. What are they doing here? Let's show famous lawgivers. So we have Moses. Oh, and hey, there's Mike Johnson. He's a lawgiver. You know, these two dudes, they're kind of the same person because they are both lawgivers. Let's ignore the fact. I mean, Mike Johnson's from Louisiana, so they like the guy. So, like, I'm not surprised that Republicans would point to him. But to be clear, Mike Johnson has presided over one of the least productive sessions of Congress in U.S. history. And if you're saying all lawmakers are the same, one of them is Moses. He was with the 10 Commandments. You could have a picture of Marjorie Taylor Greene and it would accomplish the same thing. And I don't think anyone would argue that makes kids learn anything. So this idea that you got to show a picture of Mike Johnson is ridiculous. There were a couple more I wanted to show you. I won't spend too much time on these. But in the lawsuit, the Attorney General also says that what about a poster you could put in computer classes like this one? It's humor. inspired. Let's see. Here we go. This one is humor inspired, tablet humor. And you have two iPads talking to each other. What's that? Another iPad said, that was the original tablet. Ha ha ha. That's a joke. Uh-huh. There's also another one right here, which I don't know if they said you could put this in a speech language pathology room. I don't know if I like this one. Even important men stutter. And they have King George VI of Britain. I think that was the one from the King's Speech movie, but he struggled with a speech impediment. And apparently Moses in the Bible also says in the Bible, like, he's not sure he could talk that well. And so they're saying, look, you could put this up in the speech pathology classroom saying, look, important men stutter. And that's their justification to put up the 10 Commandments. Like, they're just grasping at straws here in the worst ways, right? It's so bad. It's so bad. And yet this is what they're doing in Louisiana. And I know I said this before, but like, it doesn't matter to them that an identical law saying let's put up the 10 Commandments in classrooms, that was deemed unconstitutional 44 years ago in a lawsuit, in a case called Stone versus Graham. That was in Kentucky. That was deemed unconstitutional. Louisiana officials are basically hoping, listen, even if this judge says our law is illegal, we're going to just keep appealing it till it gets to our buddies on the Supreme Court so they can overturn the Stone case. That is what they're hoping for. I don't know. It's just disturbing that these people have nothing better to do. Louisiana is one of the worst states in the country when it comes to education. They could do so much for students, but Republicans who run the state just don't care. This is the shit they're trying to do because they don't actually care about improving students' lives. They just want to shove Christianity in their faces. I mean, for what it's worth, the judge who is listening, who is hearing this case, that who's randomly assigned this case, he is a judge who was nominated by Barack Obama. So maybe he's competent, which is more than you can say for Trump judges. So I hope he declares it illegal. But it would just be so much better if he really quickly said this law is illegal and puts this whole thing to rest. And Louisiana doesn't bother appealing it because it's dumb. It's a dumb law. They will appeal it, and they're hoping it gets to their friends. But man, don't they have anything better to do? I mean, clearly they don't, but I wish they did.